Good morning, everybody. We're back in the garden again today, trying to take advantage of this little bit of sunshine in between two rainstorms. So I just ran out here with the butterflies. There they are. And as you can see, they're really enjoying the sunshine. I'm not sure, but I did tell them today was the day we're going to take the top off and cheer them as they fly away, right? They got to get out of here, just like our book yesterday. But before I let them go, I want to make sure that we can keep the life cycle going, right? So we want these adult butterflies to stay in the garden and lay their eggs. And the question is, how do you get butterflies to lay eggs in your garden? And the answer is, you have to provide them the right kind of plant. So these are some herbs. We've got some rosemary, some thyme, some oregano growing in the garden. I've got mint. I've got some chives that butterflies like, and we're going to plant those up after we let these guys free. Maybe we'll plant them first and let's see if they go right to them. But the idea is, if you have the right kind of plant, then the right kind of insect will be drawn to your garden. And in the case of these guys, these guys like a lot of wildflower plants. But oh, here comes Spencer. Hi, Spence. And here comes Millie. And here comes Todd. Hi. Hello, everybody. The gang's all here. The butterflies are going wild. So the idea is if you want butterflies to stick around, you have to make sure you have the right kind of plant for them to lay their eggs on. And those are called host plants. Oh, I just thought you were going to bring like her out to say hi.
I can take her back?
That's okay. No, let her stick her nose out. But I have a feeling I might be running in if it rains again. So come on out, Mill. Say, what are these things? I watched them yesterday. We just woke her up. She's very tired.
She's got a water drop on her nose.
All right. Oh, look, we've got a blue jay at the feeder. There's a lot of activity in the garden this morning. So we're going to get started reading this book called Jack's Garden by Henry Cole. And Jack is a kid who wants all kinds of wildlife in his garden, and he knows that in order to bring the wildlife, you have to have the right kind of plants. And those, like we talked about, are called host plants. For Painted Ladies, our host plants are things like beans and a lot of wildflowers. But for other different types of butterflies, different types of herbs are their host plants. So I've got plenty of herbs and vegetables in this garden, so everybody should want to stick around. So let's get started. We've got Jack's Garden by Henry Cole. Yeah, we could leave her. Jack's Garden by Henry Cole. Looks like he's making a big garden. This is the garden that Jack planted. This is the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. These are the seeds that fell on the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. And you can see he's got a lot of wildflowers, columbines, black-eyed Susan, clover. I've got a lot of these. We'll take a look at some of them in the garden before we plant. This is the rain that wet the seeds that fell on the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. These are the seedlings that sprouted with the rain that wet the seeds that fell on the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. Look at everybody coming to visit. These are the plants that grew from the seedlings that sprouted with the rain that wet the seeds that fell on the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. So we've got bee balm, I've got that. Allium, I've got that. Hollyhocks, we don't have those. Spiderwort, I've got that. Praying mantis, we're waiting on those guys. Columbine, I've got tons of that. And hawkweed, and there's a little snake. So I've got a lot of these back here, so I'm gonna get a lot of these critters. These are the buds that formed on the plants that grew from the seedlings that sprouted with the rain that wet the seeds that fell on the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. So you can see we've got the ladybugs coming to visit, all the different kinds of beetles. We learned a lot about stuff in this book. Buttercups, dianthus, foxglove, some ferns and poppies, and milkweed. These are the flowers that blossom from the buds that formed on the plants that grew on the seedlings that sprouted with the rain that wet the seeds that fell on the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. Lots of these, right? Butterflies are very excited. Ooh, look at these. These are the insect that sipped from the flower that blossomed from the bud that formed on the plants that grew from the seedlings that sprouted with the rain that wet the seeds that fell on the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. So there they are. They're all coming. If you plant it, they will come. These are the birds that chased the insects that sipped on the nectar from the flowers that blossomed from the buds that formed on the plants that grew from the seedlings that sprouted with the rain that wet the seeds that fell on the soil that made up the garden that Jack planted. Right? The birds are going to come. And this is the garden that Jack planted. Right? All of those creatures, all of that wildlife. And it talks about how to start your own garden. So when we talk about butterflies and host plants, I'm going to take you around and I'm going to show you a few of the things that we have back here, but that were mentioned in the book. So this one right here is columbine. That's a host plant that was mentioned in the book. Let's see, what else do we have blooming? Oh, these, we saw these. They've lost their flower now, but these are alliums. They used to have pink. I've got some white ones. Those are also host plants, right? This sedum, that's going to turn pink. So a lot of these, the spirea, this is going to have a haircut the next time you see it. It won't be this gigantic. There's another allium. So a lot of these plants are home. This is my mint. So we know a lot of insects like mint. This is asparagus. And so we know a lot of these plants play host to a lot of insects. Now here we're in the vegetable section, but this is something called spiderwort. And over here is my big pot of milkweed with my sign that says the difference between a flower and a weed is judgment. So milkweed is a plant that is good for a lot of different kinds of butterflies, most famously the monarch. And I have a big pot of it. I don't really like to grow it in the garden because it gets big. But every now and again, I'm waiting for the year when I will come and see some eggs on the underside of milkweed. This year might be the year, guys. I've never seen it this big. So we'll take a walk back. We'll plant some herbs in my herb pot. And then we'll let the butterflies free. Okay? Just give me a minute. I'm going to clip in. Hi, guys. All right, so we're ready to start planting a few of our herbs. Took me a while to find my gardening stool. It was somewhere in the garden. And so I've got my, oh, we got a woodpecker. I don't want to move the camera. To do some planting of the herbs. Now, some of these I did earlier in the season. Some of them are perennial, so they come back every single year. We're going to learn more about those plants next week, I think. Maybe the week after. Summer is long. Lots of time in the garden. So this one is called mint. This is one that tastes like candy cane. So if we were at school, we would pluck some off and crush it with our fingers and give it a sniff. And it smells just like chewing gum or peppermint or anything, because that's what it's made from. And mint is one that comes back every year. So this was not new this year. This was growing in my pot. The same thing with these herbs over here. These are called chives. They're in the onion family. And a lot of times you have them on baked potatoes and stuff like that. So when we have potatoes, I come out and I cut them. And they get little flowers. And the flowers are the things that the insects and that the insects love. So I had another herb here in all of these holes called basil. That's one that we have in a lot of our spaghetti sauces and our pizza sauces. And the squirrels evidently really like basil because they came and they pulled it all out. They pulled it all out from all over the garden. And I have to get more. This is parsley. And you can see I've been cutting my parsley because we've been using it in a lot of recipes. But the good thing about herbs is the more you cut them and the more you cook with them, the more they grow. They get very bushy. So the two that we're going to put in today is this one called lime thyme. There's lots of different kinds of thyme. This one gets little tiny flowers. And if you tickle, the trick is to tickle the leaves of the herbs to release the smell. And when you smell this one, it actually smells like lime. And you could use this when you cook. We're gonna do some things with different kinds of thyme and different herbs. Maybe in our next lesson or two. A lot is gonna depend on the praying mantises. And then this one is another one that we use for pizza sauce. This is called oregano. And you tickle the leaves, you wake it up. Some of these you can just eat the leaves. Some of them you want to cook. So what we're going to do is we're going to plant up these herbs in my herb bowl so that we can attract and keep a lot of our garden friends. Now you butterflies, and I've got our butterflies right here. So we'll take the lid off, and hopefully they'll stick around for a little while and we can enjoy them. So here's one. There's two. Ooh, there she goes. Congratulations. Happy flyaway day. There's number 3. We'll leave the oranges there for a little bit. Come on. It's okay. Woo, there they go. Here's number 5, the last one. Come on. I know the world is a big place. Don't be nervous. Today's your day. I have a fruit feeder for the birds, but I don't want to let these guys go by where the birds go to eat. That would not be a fun way to start out, right? Being chased by some birds. Maybe I'll turn the time lapse on and we'll see how long they stay, okay?